Hello, everybody. Welcome to this part one of a four-part program around how to succeed without feeling like an imposter. Now, if you're like many people, chances are you will have started the new year with a ton of energy and lots of good intentions, resolutions, goals, all of it. And like many people, maybe by the end of this first week, some of them have fallen by the wayside. Some of them are still very much alive and kicking, but today's session, I really want to unpack how we set goals. How do we create lasting change? Because it's just such an important life skill. And I think very often we go about it the wrong way. So in today's session, we are going to be looking at your concept of success. So this term, of course, is banded around. Lots of people have got their own definitions, and I'm going to really encourage you to create your own definition, your own meaning. Next week, we'll be looking at what the imposter syndrome is. Lots of us suffer with it. Lots of us who are go-getters and goal setters can really stretch ourselves and then not really be able to enjoy the fruits of our labor. And I want to change that with this program. Part three is when we look at how we talk to ourselves. So what are the things that we can do to start to change our conversation with ourselves? And then part four is really looking at how do we move out of our comfort zone and enjoy it? How do we pick ourselves up when things don't go to plan? How do we rethink risk-taking? So each session builds on each other. I hope you'll be with me for each one in January. The idea really is to give you some practical tools, but as well to give you some thought-provoking resources so that you can go away and reflect and start to absorb some of this information. So in today's session, we're going to be asking ourselves three questions which really result in sort of solid goals. We'll then be looking at your motivation. So why is it that you want to change? Why now? What's important about that? And we'll begin to define your meaning of the word success. In terms of what to expect, this is a big topic. I've cherry-picked some things that I found helpful over the years. We're going to build on the program, as I've mentioned. It is going to be interactive. There'll be the chat function, and there'll be questions at the end, which can be anonymous. And it is being recorded so that you can watch it again. After the session, I'll email everyone that attended with a resource sheet and the slides. So the key idea I wanted to start with really is that very often when we're thinking about goal setting, we focus very heavily on the what, on the result, on the outcome, on the figure, on the stat, on the job promotion. And oh, someone has just said that they can't hear me. I'm just wondering in the chat if you could give me a thumbs up if you can hear me. You can, Claire. Okay, thank you. You can hear me. Okay, sorry, I'm afraid that might be your end. So yes, just going back to setting goals, we often focus too heavily on the what and not enough on the why, on the how, or on the who. And this is what I'm going to really pay attention to now. So let's start with the basics, the fundamentals, which is the definition of a goal is really a desired outcome. It's something that we want that wouldn't otherwise happen without us doing something. So it requires some resistance, and us to meet that resistance, it requires some effort. So all fairly simple, but important to get clear on the first step. So let me ask you, have you set goals already? Yes or no in the chat. Is it something that you've already started thinking about, or is it something that you absolutely haven't a clue about, haven't even started, don't know where to begin? Yeah, we've got some. Okay, we've got about half and half. Generally thought, but nothing concrete. Okay. Thinking about them. Okay. Well, I hope as we go through this session, those of you that have come up with some goals, you might be able to refine them a little bit further. And for those that you haven't even started, hopefully you'll leave today's session with some direction. So goals are a good idea. Why are goals a good idea? Do you want to jot that in the chat? For those of you that have started writing your goals, why should we do this? What's the reasoning behind setting goals? Provides focus, keeps you on track, gives you direction. Yeah, motivates you. Yeah, keeps us moving forward, gives us direction and purpose. Yeah, all of those things are absolutely true, and why I'm a big fan of setting goals. They give us meaning, they give us something to focus on, they help us make decisions. So there's a lot of evidence to suggest that setting goals is a good idea. But there are a lot of mistakes that can occur when we set goals, which lead to us actually not following through with them. And I just want to run through these 5 mistakes. So if you've set your goals, you can you can hopefully avoid these mistakes. And if you haven't, then here's something to bear in mind. So very often we'll set a goal because it's something that we feel like we should do. We should do dry January. We should do this, go to the gym. We should do this. And actually, when we really are honest with ourselves, that's not something that we want to do. And we've got to enjoy the process for it to last. So we make should goals. That's probably the first mistake. The second is that we make far too many. We go for that job promotion. We want to learn Spanish. We want to paint the back bedroom. We want to volunteer. We load ourselves up. And I often think that's because we're want to prove our worth. It comes from often a place which I'm hoping to address during this program. But really, I want us to only really set 1 to 3 goals. And that way you can really focus on achieving it and feel proud of yourself and feel like you've got that momentum, rather than feeling scattered and fraught and hopeless that you haven't achieved, you haven't been able to set out what you've achieved to. The third is that we miss this sweet spot. So either the goal that we set is too easy or it's way too ambitious. We've got to make it just the right amount of effort. We want to feel pleased when we've achieved it, but not too overwhelmed. And that's going to be a very personal thing for you. The fourth is having a goal that's just too general. I want to earn more money. I want to take more time off. I want to go to the gym. I want to get fitter. All of those things, they're fine as a direction. But one of the questions I'm going to encourage you to reflect on is, well, how will you know if you've been successful? One of the main motivating factors is making progress. So we want to make sure that we feel like we're making progress. So how will you know if you've been successful is a good question to ask yourself, one that Heidi Halverson came up with. And the fifth is sort of counter to that, which is having goals that are too specific. So really, you'll know yourself, and you might be this kind of like all or nothing person. If you don't do it, then that's it. There's no point, can't do it. And research from the University of Florida has said that actually we want it in a range. So for example, it's easier to lose 2 to 4 pounds than it is 3 pounds, because we've got that flexibility. Life happens. We can't often stick to something religiously every day. It'd be great if we could. But the reason why this is I like this is because it caters to the unpredictable and the unknown. So I think, when you're setting your goal, can you just have it within a range so that you're more likely to stick to it? So I'm just going to go on some other tips now, which are backed by evidence, which suggests that if you actually write your goals down, you're more likely to stick to them. So just the very act of writing them down can help. The second is to focus on what you will do, not what you won't do. For example, if you're going to give up alcohol throughout January, focus on, the goal should be, I'm going to be drinking more lime and soda than alcohol. So focus on what you will do, not what you won't do. And I've definitely fallen foul of that before. You know, I will eat more apples, less chocolate, that sort of thing. I will take more deep breaths rather than shoot from the hip. Those kind of things will just, it makes it more concrete. Decide when and where you will take each action. So this is kind of like preloading your decision. So if there is a certain time of day or a certain behavior that you would have taken that you're trying to change, you need to visualize what you're going to do instead. So actually visualize yourself going to the bar, or I'm using alcohol just because it's a common one in January. Go to the bar and visualize yourself ordering a lime and soda rather than something else. So that can be really helpful to stem the falling off the track. And as I mentioned earlier, motivation is really topped up by a sense of progress. So reflect on how well you're doing through the week, through the fortnight, through the month. And that can be really bolstering for your own sense of confidence, your own resolve that you're doing what you said you'll do. And if you haven't managed, what did you learn in that process? What could you do differently next time? You know, try not to beat yourself up if you do fall off or if you don't miss the thing that you set out to, but just look at what you can learn from that experience so that you don't do it again. So that was some sort of, you know, evidence-based research on what makes goals more likely to be achieved. But what I want to spend most of the time focusing on is that's a lot of the what, that's a lot of the outcome, that's a lot of the, you know, the results, but it's only part of the picture. And I'm drawing on James Clear's Atomic Habits book through this session, as well as many others, because I think he's really onto something when it comes to lasting change. And one of my favorite quotes of his is, you know, if you want better results, actually, it's more about focusing on the habits and the systems underneath those results where you want to pay attention. Because he says you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your system. And I think what this is speaking to is we can start January full of, you know, energy and enthusiasm, but by the time the third week rolls around and it's raining and, you know, that's going to be our worst day. So what habits have we set up so that we can still achieve it on our worst day? What systems and habits can we set up so that they become automatic, so that we don't have to use such an enormous amount of mental willpower and cognitive bandwidth to achieve it? So the three questions now I want to share with you to help you reach your goals is based on his model. And he says that many of us set goals where we start with the outcome, as we've just done. We've got a figure to hit, a target to reach, a stat to achieve. But underneath that, there will be a process that outcome rests on, a system, a habit, a skill that we need to learn. And under that is a type of person. And I think this is very interesting. Who is the type of person that you want to become? So we've got outcomes, as we've said, the results, the job promotion, the targets, which is what we want to achieve, the habits and the processes and the systems, which is the how that will occur. But then underneath, it's who do we wish to become? Who is that person that we are striving for? And he says that true behavior change is really identity change, which I think is absolutely fascinating. And so for lasting success, we want to start with our identity. So here are some examples. So the focus isn't to lose weight, it's to become a healthy person. The focus isn't to post 12 times on LinkedIn a month. It's to become a content creator. It's one of mine. The focus isn't to spend an hour in the gym. It's to become an active person. So can you see how just widening out and adopting this kind of identity as the type of person you want to become ultimately can really result in long-term lasting change? So he says, actually, behavior change is quite simple. You just decide on the type of person that you want to be, and then you prove it to yourself with small wins. And I think this is very interesting because, there's a lot of talk about aspirations and, saying these mantras over to yourself. But I'm not sure about you, but in my experience, that can just exacerbate the gap between where I am now and where I want to be. But for example, if I said to myself, I want to be a confident person, a small win might be walking into a meeting with my shoulders back. It could be standing up straight. It could be asking a question early on in the meeting. It could be asking a question when I think I should know the answer, but doing it anyway. And so these little behaviors that we take are sort of votes for the kind of person that we're becoming. It's evidence. And that after over a while starts to solidify as the kind of identity, the kind of person that you want to become. So yes, he says no single instance will transform your beliefs, but as the votes build up, as this new behavior builds up, so does this evidence for your new identity. And I really like this. I think it's sort of very galvanizing. It sort of helps us have agency over a situation that we want to change. The other brilliant result of thinking about it in this way is that, we'll have a million decisions that we need to make every day. But when you come from an identity person, for example, let's say you were trying to lose some weight and you are faced with all of these decisions, you could just ask yourself one question, which is, what would a healthy person do? And that will then help you decide which route to take. So I hope you can see that this is a really effective way of creating that long-lasting change. The downside, you see, of just creating a goal is that when you hit that goal, unless you've got the habits and the systems and the identity sort of set up underneath it, chances are you might fall back to your old ways after you've hit that goal. And that can be, one of the downsides. Another downside is that you're sort of delaying your sense of happiness. Once I achieve this, then I'll be happy. Whereas if you're able to enjoy the process of getting there because you're someone that loves learning, or you're someone that's, that gets a buzz out of testing yourself, you're enjoying the process. You're able to, reap some of the benefits along the way rather than just store them up to that imagined place. And that sense of happiness that you think you'll get when you get there. So, of course, for many of you who are on the program, maybe you are saddled with this sense of imposterism or perfectionist tendencies or people pleaser. And so that can be an identity that we might want to actually look at and start to change. So we could look at it the other way. What are the habits, what are the habitual thinking, patterns that we've got which are leading to that identity? And what systems support that? And can we start to look at, which we will do through the program, how we might start to change those? And then as a result, what's the outcome that we want having done that? Do we want to enjoy our achievements without feeling like a fraud? Do we want to feel less exhausted at the end of the week? And reduce our chances of burnout? Do we want to improve our saying no skills? So for those of you that haven't set any goals, maybe these are some of the things that you could start to reflect on. So I'm just going to pause for a moment because I've been talking a lot and just give you a moment to think about what is the type of person that you want to become if you'd set some goals? And for those that hadn't set any goals or hadn't sort of defined any, just jot down what's coming to mind. Is there anything that's alive in you right now? So now we've looked at some of the goals. I want to double down on our motivation, because as I mentioned, many of the reasons why goals aren't achieved is because we feel like we should do them. So why is it important to you, and why now? And I think they are important things to reflect on, because we're all super busy. There are so many things vying for our attention, and changing our behavior can be difficult. It can be hard. We are one of the most adaptable species on the planet. However, change is expensive in terms of the energy that it requires our brain to make. So it's got to be something that is really important for you in order for you to get behind it. And why now? And I'm a big believer in changing from a place of of a place where you feel like you're already doing well and this is going to be even better, rather than coming from a place of beating yourself up or not feeling like enough. It's what can you be proud of already, and from that platform, can you look at what you can do differently? And I want to explore the difference between extrinsic and intrinsic motivation, and the difference, and why it matters. So if, for example, you loved playing piano and it just gave you so much joy, you were able to just get into the zone, into that state of flow, it relaxed you, but you felt like you could express yourself, and you played the piano for no other reason other than pure enjoyment, that would be you being intrinsically motivated to play the piano. So you're just doing it for its own sake. The actual action is its own reward. And you would do it without taking anything external into account. So fame or money or status or significance. So it's just for its own sake. But if you played the piano because, let's say, your parents really pressurized you into playing the piano, or you wanted to do it so that you could achieve some notoriety or significance or status, or something like that, then there's no judgment here, but you're doing it to get something else further down the line. That would be you being extrinsically motivated to play the piano. And we tend to be a mix of both. And I think actually a lot of the behaviors that we do generally are a mix of both, the ones that we're able to sustain over the long term. But why this is important is that Jackie and Sarah, I know you've raised your hand, but if you want to just jot your question down into the Q&A box, I can deal with it. I can answer it at the end. When we are more extrinsically motivated, then what we find is our intrinsic values are starved. It's a bit like a cake where we've only got a certain amount of slices, and if we have a greater leaning to those external, where we're looking for fame and status and notoriety, then those internal ones, those things that we do for just pure enjoyment, get starved. And this is what Johan Hari talks a lot about in his book Lost Connections, which I will include in the resource list. And why this matters is because he says that, well, this is what Tim Castor's work actually says, that actually when we just like junk food doesn't meet our nutritional needs, actually these junk values, these very when we're very externally motivated, doesn't meet our psychological needs. And that's why he calls them junk values. So research from Professor Tim Kasser over in America basically says the more materialistic and extrinsically motivated we become, the more depressed and anxious you'll be. So what we really want to do is find those things that we just have pleasure in doing, and can we create habits doing those? And that's what will, obviously create a bit more long-lasting success, which is really related to, this behavior model that James Clear's come up with, which is, when we really enjoy these small, tiny habits that we create, that's what leads to the success. He's really all about, less about the position that we take, a static position or a static endpoint, and more about the trajectory. Can we just be 1% better every day? These very small things that we take, that we incorporate into our day, and ultimately that's what will get us there, but it will take longer. So good habits can set us up very well, but in the future, but bad habits, of course, also compound and take us further away from where we want to be. So yeah, one of the other things that he says is, that when we're looking at the intrinsic motivations, ultimately we want those to become, I'm the type of person who is this, rather than who just wants this. So yeah, good habits are things that we intrinsically enjoy. Start small. Think about, what can you achieve on your worst day? We'll often start with thinking, I'm going to set this goal and I'm going to be in the gym every day. And, that's optimizing for your best day. But what do you think you can achieve on your worst day? And that's why I think I like the range of goals. Can you, if you wanted to, set up a writing habit, can you journal 5 out of 7 days? Can you go to the gym 4 out of 7 days? Something like that, so that when you fall, you can get back on and you can feel like you're making progress, and the momentum is building. Because it's consistency that we want. It's consistency what we want. That's what's building up those votes. That's what's going to create the new identity. So we've looked at how to set goals. We've looked at some of the mistakes that we can make. We've looked at some of the tips, and they're very much focused on the outcome. We've looked at your why. We've looked at the kind of person that you want to become. And now I'd like to spend some time looking at your own personal concept of success. So imagine that I was about to introduce you to somebody who I had told you was going to be very successful. What's going through your mind? What would you imagine this person to be like? What would you imagine them to do, to be? Confident, self-assured, intimidating, focused, a leader, calm, well-dressed, articulate, dynamic. Oh, lovely qualities. Okay. Knowledgeable. Okay. Good looking and financially secure, single-minded. Expectation is that they're a senior leader, but it shouldn't be. Okay, interesting. Very interesting. Well, lots of us would assume that they were wealthy, like some of you said, but actually, one of the things I want to try and counter is this idea that it has to be externally. There has to be a lot of external accolades. And I love this quote from Stephen Covey, although it's a little bit bleak. Most people spend their life climbing the ladder of success only to reach the top and then realize their ladder has been leaning against the wrong wall. So what I want us to do is think about, well, which wall do we want our ladder to be leaning against? What matters to us? Where do we want to spend our time and energy? And I think to begin with, it's helpful to us to work out what season of life we're in. Are we at the beginning of our career where we're really trying to make a name for ourselves and work is very front and center? So we may want to deprioritize seeing our friends or health and fitness, or that we some of you said that they're very single-minded, a successful person. And I think that's true to an extent. We have to work out where we want to place our focus and attention. And so what season of life are you in? Are you at a relatively comfortable place in your career, in which case you want to try and prioritize your health? Can you come up with some sort of balance, which when you reflect on at the end of the week, you could say that was a successful week because of the metrics that you value, the criteria that you live by, the values that you have. And what are you optimizing for? Are you a parent, and therefore, your priorities are around child rearing and so on, and therefore, you're having to juggle a little bit, but you reach the end of the week going, that was a well-lived week. I'm happy about that. I feel like I've made good choices around my time. I think it can be very difficult to try and ace every single aspect of your life, and then come away feeling like you're not achieving anything. And it's much more motivating to go, these are my top 3 priorities right now, and I'm going to optimize for those. So trying not to be so blanket about what success is, but think about where your focus is and what energy you've got and where you want to direct it. I love this definition by Ralph Waldo Emerson of success. I think it can be quite helpful to look at how other people define success. And he says to laugh often and much, to win the respect of intelligent people and the affection of children, to appreciate beauty, to find the best in others, to leave the world a little better, whether by a healthy child or a garden patch, to know that even one life has breathed easier because you have lived. This is success. So very poetic and quite all-encompassing, I would argue. So that's his definition of success. I think it can be helpful to focus on what our needs are. We're very good at thinking about what we want, but not so good about recognizing what it actually is that we need. And I want to spend a little bit of time now going over the 6 human needs that we've got, because I think it's difficult to feel successful if we don't feel fulfilled. And one of the routes to feeling fulfilled is to have our psychological needs met, which is what Johan Hari was talking about with these extrinsic values. Often they don't meet our psychological needs. So the first need that we all have is certainty. We need a degree of certainty to feel stable and secure. We don't do very well when there's a lot of, swirling uncertainty. So that could be a stable income, that could be a stable house, that could be a stable relationship. There could be lots of things that feed that sense of certainty. However, we also need a degree of uncertainty, because otherwise we'd get bored. So this can be moving out of your comfort zone. This could be travel. This could be trying things that are new. This is about, adding some color and some spice to your life. The next is that we need to feel love and belonging. So this could be, of course, love and belonging of other people. It could be a love of a pursuit, like a hobby. It could be art, music, and a secure tribe of people. I think one of my definitions of success is being able to spend my time how I want to, doing meaningful work, and also having a good crew of people around me who I love and respect. We all have a need to feel significant. So whether that's through accomplishments at work, made to feel important and valued is a big one. And of course, that's how a lot of us resort to those external, extrinsic, motivations to meet this need. But it's only one need. It's not the main one. We also need to feel like we're contributing. So whether that's sharing your knowledge, whether that's helping people, whether that's volunteering, whether that's donating time, expertise, money. When we give, we get this sense of generosity, and it sort of brightens our being. And we also need to feel like we're growing and developing. We have a natural proclivity to want to grow and develop. And this is why when we feel a bit stuck or stagnant, actually picking up a new skill or setting a goal to move ourselves out of our comfort zone can be really helpful in order that we feel fulfilled. So just take a moment and reflect on, out of all those needs, which of those do you think needs your attention? And could you set a goal to achieve that? So could you, if you don't feel like you contribute that much, could you think about how you could creatively do that? Could you share some knowledge? Could you become a mentor? Could you volunteer somewhere? Could you help someone out? So things like that just can really help you at the end of a week to go, that was a well-lived week. And I think this can be a useful question, is to think about, well, what do you want your days to look like? You know, we can plan out and think about what we would want our life to look like on our deathbeds. But actually, our lives are made up of a series of days. And I think having this narrow focus can be really helpful, because I think it's difficult to feel successful if you hate your lifestyle or yourself for that matter. And that's, you know, on one side, this is why it's important to recognize which season you're in. Because actually, if you're having to live a very stressful lifestyle to you know, you've got lots of responsibilities at work, at home, but you're doing it for a short time, and you know the reason why you're doing it, and that gives you significance and it gives you that love and belonging, then you're probably okay to do that for a while, because it's conscious. But if it's unconscious and you can't see an end in sight, and you sort of lost your way a little bit, and you actually really don't like your lifestyle very much, then it might be difficult for you to go, no, I feel successful, because it doesn't meet all of those needs that we've just talked about. I mentioned, you know, panning out and reviewing our life, as it were. And many of you might know the 5 regrets that Bronnie Ware has written about in her book. So Bronnie Ware, for those of you that don't know, was a palliative nurse. And so she was with many, many people at the end of their lives. And these 5 common themes were spoken about by many people at that stage in their life. And while it might be a little morbid, I think it's useful to know that this is what people often say. And once we know that, then we can choose how to spend our time differently. So the wishes were, I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life others expected of me. And I think for those of us that have suffered or do suffer with imposter syndrome, this can be quite a big one, because we feel like we have to achieve all these great things because that's what other people expect of us. And yet sometimes that's not necessarily what makes us happy and fulfilled. The next related to this is, you know, I wish I hadn't worked so hard. I wish I'd stayed in touch with my friends. I wish that I'd let myself be happier. And I wish I'd had the courage to express my feelings. So if expressing your feelings is something that you feel a little bit uncomfortable with, I feel unskilled in, maybe that could be a goal that you could start to express them more readily. Maybe you start with journaling. Maybe you start by taking a communication course in how to do that. You know, these little things that can help to direct your attention and set goals can be helpful. So yes, I believe one of the hallmarks of successful people is that they like and they respect themselves. And of course, this is an inside job, and one that we'll be looking at and exploring further as we go through the program. But as I said earlier, you know, it's difficult to feel successful if you hate your lifestyle or you hate yourself. So those have been a few sort of tendrils and a few examples from poets and philosophers and research based on, what people define as success. But really the big question is what you mean by success. And I hope that's given you some food for thought. Of course, it is very personal and it will depend on your priorities and your values and what stage of life you're in. But we do all we have those 6 needs that we all have that bind us all. And I do think sometimes we overlook them, often because we prioritize feeling significant. We want to feel significant. But actually contributing and having a good crew of people around you and doing meaningful work and things like that is just as important. So I just want to recap what we've covered, and then I've got some time. Got some time for questions. Got lots of time for questions. So when we're thinking about setting goals, we'll often make those common mistakes around not actually setting goals that we want to. We'll set too many. They're either too general or they're too specific. We want to set goals that have a range. We want to write our goals down. And when we're thinking about how to set goals, yes, we want an appreciation of the what, but we also want to think about what systems and what habits are going to support that outcome. And underneath that is the kind of person that you want to become. So what would a healthy person do? And think about those little behavior changes that equate to votes for the type of identity that you're trying to inhabit. Reflecting on your why is very important. So why do you want to change, and why now? And is it because you're going to really enjoy the process? You're going to love learning new things. And yes, being out of your comfort zone might be difficult, and yet it helps you achieve the thing that you want to. So it's kind of a necessary part of the process. And that you can feel proud at the end of the day for doing it because you feel like you're reaching your potential. Of course, extrinsic motivations aren't bad in and of themselves. It's just we don't want to be too extrinsically motivated because that starves those intrinsic motivations. So what is it that brings you joy? And can you incorporate little moments of those during your day? And when we start to define your concept of success, there's a number of models and routes in that you can use here. You can look at those 6 psychological needs. You can look at what you want a typical day to look like. You could use the 5 regrets to inform how you want to set your goals. And you can also think about, well, what's the relationship I want to have with myself? Am I changing because I'm coming from a place of feeling proud and kind to myself, or am I coming from a place where I'm kind of beating myself up and punishing and pushing myself? And we're going to be looking at that in more detail as we go through. So I'd like to leave you with this quote from Mary Oliver, who says, tell me, what is it that you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? Our days are precious and our time is precious, and where we focus our attention really does require some consideration and thought so that we can make the most of our time. So, things to do before part 2, if you're joining me on part 2, look out for my email and the resources in the recording. Reflect on your ingredients of success. You might want to start jotting these ideas down so that you can review them as we go through the year. Part 2 is going to be held next Thursday at the same time, 1 o'clock. And this is when we'll be looking at the imposter syndrome up and close. I've got a fortnightly email called the Kinder Reminder, which really is just a very short newsletter which contains often a small poem or a question or something to ponder, but it's really in service of helping you to be kind to yourself, because when we're kinder to ourselves, we generally make better decisions, and life's generally more fun. So that's yes, if you'd like to scan that, do that. But now I've got some time for questions. If anybody has got any questions, you can pop those through the Q&A. So, and these can be anonymous. The first question we've got is, well, I struggle with is the idea of reaching potential. What is my potential? Where do I want to reach it? And what will I be happy with? I mean, that's such a good question. Well, I think a good place to start with that is thinking about, could you just allow yourself to dream a little bit? Like, what would be an audacious goal? What would be just incredible to achieve? And maybe you could start from there and work backwards. You could also start the other way, which is just edging out of your comfort zone. So what matters to you when you think about those 6 needs? You know, do you feel like you're learning and growing at the rate that you want to? You know, where do you feel held back? There's a lovely quote. I can't remember the author now, but I'll remember it for next time, which is what you fear is what you seek. So where are the places where fear shows up? You know, is it in expressing your views? Is it expressing your art? Is it where is it in your life that fear shows up? Because that could be a good place to start. And then you know, it depends on how quickly you want to move out of your comfort zone. I think certainly last year I was a little bit out of my comfort zone quite significantly, and I didn't enjoy it. It was too much. It was you know, not in that Goldilocks zone, but it proved that I could do it. But it was quite stressful. So you've got to decide on the rate at which you're able to feel like you could sustain it. Sherry says, I've been great. Unfortunately, I'm unable to the next week. Yeah, you can have all the sessions will be recorded. And so I will have your email address if you attended it. So just drop me an email next week and I can send you the recording. Okay, there are the questions. So we've got a few through the chat. Jenny, you've raised your hand. If you wouldn't mind just popping it through the Q&A or the chat, then I can get it. Oh, Amanda says the kind of reminders are great. Thank you so much. What would you suggest is an ideal number of goals to set? I don't want to create too many that it's overwhelming, but I also want to make sure I cover off my personal and professional aims. Excellent question. I think between 1 and 3 is ideal. Yeah. So one of my goals, I'm going to make it public because I think you're more likely to do it if you you know, include other people in it, is I want to post more frequently on LinkedIn. So I'm sometimes a bit shy of expressing my ideas, and yet I feel like that's something that I need to move out of my comfort zone. So that's something that I'm going to do, and I've set myself, it is a numerical goal, 12 times a month. So you can all hold me accountable to that if you want to, but it's just, and then my identity behind that is I'm a content creator. And so you can see that actually, okay, when I embody that, then that's just what content creators do. And the intrinsic motivation behind that is I really like learning and researching and sharing ideas. So hopefully it should be a fun thing rather than feeling like, oh, I'm going to be judged and criticized and all those fears that can rush in when you put yourself out on the line. So long answer, I think between 1 and 3. Do goals need to be achievable? I think they do need to be achievable. I think dreams and aspirations are different. They can sort of set the tone and the direction, but I think goals, in order to be motivating, do need to be achievable. Because if they're not, then you can end up just feeling like you're not putting the effort where you feel it is important, and that can not be great for your sense of self-esteem. So short answer is yes, I do think they need to be achievable. I find I always need growth, whether that's qualification, new skills, enhancing skills. What does this suggest from a human need? Well, I mean, that is what you've just said. We have a natural proclivity to grow and develop. So I think that's you recognizing that that need is very present in you, and making sure that you've got some time to actually fulfill it. So yeah, as I mentioned, when we have those 6 needs met, then we feel fulfilled, and I think that's a key ingredient to feeling successful. As a part 2, if a partner doesn't want to grow with you or can't see the opportunities, what does that suggest? Oh, that's a good question. So I think often we will want to grow at different rates. And I think it might be that they just don't want to grow in the same way that you do. It may be that they're very happy to hone their skills playing sport or learning something about a hobby that they're interested in, and that would also be encapsulated in that need for growth and development. It might just be, it's not aligned to both having a difficult conversation or both being vulnerable about how you feel. So happy to talk more about that with you, but it's probably they are wanting to grow and develop, just maybe not in the same way. But I also think it's down to how much capacity we've got. I think if we've got a very full life and a big job, learning something new and changing our behavior is expensive, and when it comes to energy and mental bandwidth. So it may be that it's just slightly lower down the priority list because there are so many other competing factors. So yeah, that's worth bearing in mind. Can't make. Yeah. Oh yes, my email address next. Yes, sorry, that's there. Agree, goals need to be achievable, but also need to stretch you. Otherwise, there's no point. Yes. Is it okay to set 1 to 3 goals for personal and then the same for career, or merge these into 3 goals overall? Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on your own capacity. I think you potentially could have 3 goals that are professionally related. Like you might want to take some exams. You might want to go for a promotion. You might want to feel better at receiving feedback. So I think it's probably doable to have 1 to 3, because the year is a long time. I think it depends on the time horizon that you're looking to attain and achieve them. So I think 1 to 3 in both areas of your life is probably doable if you've got enough focus to do that. I understand changing your identity for personal goals, but I'm struggling with how you would apply that when looking at career goals. Yes. Is it becoming more confident, for example? Exactly right. So let's say, for example, we'll just take the example of feedback. Whether you're giving feedback or receiving feedback, and it's something that you do get a bit triggered about because you make it mean all sorts of things about your sense of worth and your capabilities. Actually, your sense of identity could be, I'm a confident type of person who can hear feedback and not make it mean something about my sense of worth. So that would be an example. Is that a confident person would say, thank you for sharing that, I'll give it some thought. So you're thinking about, what would that confident type of person say and do in that situation at work? Any tips on how to stay motivated? Well, a lot of this is down to how much do you want the thing, and a lot of it is around what's the easiest way, the easiest place to start. So could you just do 5 minutes of the practice that you want to do? Optimize for your worst day. You want to lower the bar to get started. And, the first few days probably will be difficult and awkward. But as you start to build up some fluency, even if it's going to the gym, for example, you might start to make some friends down there. You might start to feel like you're the kind of person that does go to the gym. You'll start to embody these different identities and get some additional benefits too. Uh, Lots of questions. This is excellent. How do you get buy-in from others to help you achieve your goals as a team leader? Good question. So I think if you're a team leader, you might want to start your team meetings or say to the rest of your team, let's use this team as a way to help and support each other's growth and development. That is one of the functions of a team. So you could say, would everybody like to bring something that they would like to, start and something that they would like to stop, for example. So you make it super tangible, and then everybody can hold each other accountable. So, for example, if you've got people in your team who are really, really hardworking, but you know that they potentially, if they keep on at that level of intensity, might suffer with stress or burnout, you might be able to say, look, I'm going to hold you accountable to making sure that you leave on time three days out of 5 or something like that. So you're able to support each other and hold each other accountable and do it in a way that demonstrates you've got their best interests at heart. So I think, often when we are holding people accountable, it's coming from a place of having their best interests at heart. It's not shaming them or making them feel judged or bad. It's reminding them that this is what you said was important, and I'm just noticing that this is starting to creep in. I hope that helps. If you find something stops you in your tracks, like an injury when you're being more active, where is the best to find support for coping mechanisms? Oh yeah, that's such a good question. I need to give that some thought. That's what we'll be covering in, building your resilience, because a lot of that is around, what you make it mean. If you've got an injury when you'll be more active, could you just take up another sort of activity that doesn't stress the injury? So, if it's high impact exercise that you've been doing, like running or something like that, could you start taking up Pilates or yoga, something that's lower impact, but you're still active? Would be a quick solution that I could think of. Just checking time. 3 minutes. Gosh, lots of questions. How do you know if you're leaning your ladder against the wrong wall? What a wonderful question. Ultimately, I think it depends on what you deem important. So if you can honestly, hand on heart, review the end of your year last year and go, I feel like I'm involved in really meaningful work. I feel like I am, my health is in a good state. I feel like my income is going in the right direction. I feel like my savings are healthy. It's really about what shines with you in terms of what fulfills you. And that is going to be different for everybody. For example, I love teaching people material that I found super helpful. What that has meant is that I have to deal with more uncertainty because I haven't got a stable job. But that drives me more than my need for certainty. So it sort of depends on what fulfills you, and can you marry that with the needs? And are you okay with having, a greater degree of uncertainty, but your work is more fulfilling, or your relationship is more fulfilling, and that, really brings you so much joy. But that means other areas aren't quite as satisfying, but you're fine with it. Happy to have another conversation with you if that's helpful, because we're running out of time. Do drop me an email if I didn't answer your question. Thanks so much for all of your engagement. It's wonderful to have so many questions. And yeah, I hope to see you all next week, where we'll be looking at the imposter.